Imagine opening your mail one ordinary evening, expecting bills or junk, only to find a $52,000 invoice for a car you never bought, your signature forged by your own family. That's the gut punch I faced. I'm Sienna Caldwell, 31, and this is the story of how I lost the family I knew but found the strength to define my own. It's a story of betrayal, hard choices, and discovering what family really means. I grew up in Westchester, New York, in a house that looked perfect. 5 bedrooms, manicured lawns, a 3-car garage. From the outside, the Caldwell family had it all. My father, Everett, was a high-flying investment banker. My mother, Margot, shone in charity circles. But inside those walls, love was a transaction. My sister, Lila, 4 years younger, was their golden child, charming, reckless, and adored. I was the responsible one, always striving for approval that never came. While Lila got a shiny BMW at 16, I got a used Toyota and a lecture on being practical. I worked hard, earned a scholarship to Cornell, and built a career as a financial analyst in Manhattan, thinking stability would earn their love. It didn't. By 29, I was self-sufficient, with my own apartment and a solid 401k. But every family gathering came with a price. Subtle jabs about my cold ambition, requests to cover Lila's rent, or fund Dad's ventures. I paid, hoping for connection, but it was a one-way street. Then came December. Scrolling Instagram on my lunch break, I saw it. My cousin Nora's post captioned, "Early Caldwell family Christmas. So blessed to have everyone together." Everyone but me. My parents, Lila, aunts, uncles, even distant cousins, gathered around a glittering tree, without so much as a text to me. When I called my mom, her voice was bright, dismissive. "Oh, Sienna, it was last minute. Lila said you were busy." I wasn't. The exclusion cut deep, but what came next was worse. Weeks later, an envelope arrived, revealing a $52,000 bill for Lila's new Mercedes, a car I never agreed to buy, with my name forged on the loan. They didn't invite me to Christmas, but they expected me to pay for their lies. Picture a house in Westchester, New York, a sprawling colonial with 5 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and lawns so pristine they could have been painted. That's where I grew up, in a home that screamed success to anyone passing by. To the outside world, the Caldwell family was the American dream. My father, Everett, a titan in investment banking, his tailored suits as sharp as his reputation. My mother, Margot, a queen of charity galas, her smile dazzling at every fundraiser. We had a 3-car garage, annual vacations to Aspen, and a life that looked flawless on paper. But inside those walls, it was a different story. Love wasn't given freely. It came with conditions, expectations, and an unspoken ledger that tracked every favor, every sacrifice, every dollar. I was Sienna Caldwell, the eldest daughter, always striving to prove my worth in a family where worth was measured in ways I could never quite grasp. When my sister, Lila, came along 4 years after me, everything shifted. She was the golden child, vibrant, charming, with a laugh that could light up a room. My parents saw her as their masterpiece, a reflection of their own charisma. Lila's tantrums were spirited. Her impulsiveness was living life to the fullest. Me, I was the serious one, the studious one, always too practical, too reserved. When I brought home straight A's, it was expected. When Lila failed a class, it was because she was too creative for rigid academics. By 16, Lila was handed the keys to a sleek, brand-new BMW, its leather seats still smelling of a showroom. My parents beamed as she revved the engine, their pride palpable. For my 16th birthday, I got a used Toyota Corolla, reliable, practical, and as my father put it, perfect for someone like you. I swallowed the sting, smiled, and thanked them because that's what I'd learned to do. Keep the peace, prove I was worthy. I threw myself into work, determined to carve out my own path. High school was a blur of late nights studying, extracurriculars, and part-time jobs to save for college. My efforts paid off. A full scholarship to Cornell, where I double majored in economics and business. I graduated at the top of my class, landed internships at top firms, and by 29, I was a financial analyst in Manhattan, living in my own apartment with a solid 401k. I'd built a life I was proud of, one that stood on my own terms. But every step forward seemed to widen the gap between me and my family. They didn't celebrate my achievements, they critiqued them. My career was too consuming, my independence selfish. Meanwhile, Lila drifted through life, dropping out of 2 colleges, chasing fleeting passions, and always landing softly, cushioned by my parents' unwavering support. I kept hoping that if I worked harder, achieved more, they'd see me, not just as a means to an end, but as their daughter. I wanted the warmth I saw in other families, the kind where love didn't come with a catch. But that warmth never came. Instead, their expectations grew, and I found myself tangled in a web of obligations I hadn't signed up for. The exploitation started small, so subtle I barely noticed at first. It was a phone call from Margot. "Sienna, Lila's a bit short on rent this month. You're doing so well. Could you help your sister out?" Or a conversation with Everett. "I've got a business venture that needs a little cash to get off the ground. It's temporary, Sienna, just until my next commission." I'd write the checks, transfer the funds, because they always framed it as family loyalty, as proof I belonged. Each time, I told myself it was a one-off, that helping them would bring us closer. But the requests never stopped. They grew bolder, hungrier. 3 years ago, Lila called me in tears, her voice trembling through the phone. She'd racked up $15,000 in credit card debt, designer clothes, weekend getaways, dinners she couldn't afford. "I promise I'll change, Sienna," she said. "I just need you to help me this once." I paid it off, dipping into my savings, believing her tearful vows to be responsible. 6 months later, I got another call. She'd maxed out the card again, this time on a trip to Miami, yacht parties, 5-star hotels, a lifestyle she couldn't sustain. When I confronted her, Margot pulled me aside. "Lila experiences life differently, Sienna. You're so blessed with your stability. Be grateful for that." The irony burned. My parents, who measured success in luxury cars and country club memberships, praised Lila's recklessness while dismissing my discipline. Then there was the time I covered their property tax bill, a hefty sum they claimed they couldn't pay because of cash flow issues. I sent the money, only to learn they just bought a vacation home in the Hamptons. When I asked about it, Everett's voice turned cold. "We sacrificed everything for your education, Sienna. You owe us." My scholarships, my student loans I'd paid off myself, they conveniently forgot those. Each request came wrapped in guilt, a reminder that my role was to provide, to prove my loyalty, to keep the family's polished facade intact. I kept giving, hoping it would earn me a place in their hearts. Family dinners were a performance. Margot's elegant table settings, Everett's stories of closing big deals, Lila's dramatic tales of her latest adventures. I'd sit there, nodding, smiling, while they glossed over my promotion or my latest project. If I dared mention my own life, the conversation would shift. Lila's new job prospect, Margot's gala, Everett's golf game. My achievements were a footnote, my sacrifices expected. Looking back, I see how they trained me to feel indebted, to believe that love was something I had to buy. Every check I wrote, every favor I granted was a transaction in their eyes, a way to keep me tethered to their needs. I was their safety net, their ATM, the one who kept their perfect image from crumbling. But I didn't see it clearly then. I was still chasing the idea of family, the kind I saw in movies or at my friends' houses, where people laughed together without keeping score. The weight of it all grew heavier with each passing year. I'd lie awake at night, wondering why I wasn't enough, why my hard work never measured up to Lila's charm. I'd replay their words, their dismissals, searching for a way to bridge the gap. I thought if I could just do more, earn more, give more, they'd finally see me. But the truth was creeping in, even if I wasn't ready to face it. Their love came with a price tag, and no amount of money could ever settle the bill. By the time I hit 29, I was exhausted, not just from my job, which demanded long hours and precision, but from the emotional toll of being the strong one in a family that saw strength as a resource to exploit. I'd built a life I was proud of, but it felt hollow when I couldn't share it with the people who were supposed to matter most. I kept telling myself that family was worth it, that their approval would eventually come. I didn't know then that the real cost was yet to come, that the facade of our family was about to crack wide open, exposing truths I'd spent years trying to ignore. It was December 15th, a gray Wednesday in Manhattan, the kind where the city's hum feels both alive and exhausting. I was on my lunch break, tucked into a corner of the office cafeteria, scrolling through Instagram to escape the spreadsheets for a moment. That's when I saw it, my cousin Nora's post, a photo of a glittering Christmas tree, surrounded by my entire family. My father, Everett, carving a turkey with that practiced smile. My mother, Margot, arranging presents in her elegant way. My sister, Lila, laughing with our aunts, uncles, cousins, even distant relatives I barely recognized. The caption read, "Early Caldwell Family Christmas. So blessed to have everyone together. Everyone except me." My heart sank, a cold weight settling in my chest. I stared at the screen, zooming in on their faces, searching for some sign of my absence being noticed. There was none. They'd gathered the previous weekend at my parents' house, and I hadn't gotten so much as a text, an email, a whisper of an invitation. It was as if I didn't exist. With shaking hands, I called my mother. The phone rang 4 times before she picked up, her voice bright, almost performative. "Oh, Sienna, how are you, sweetheart?" she said, as if nothing was wrong. I took a breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, why wasn't I invited to the family Christmas last weekend?" There was a pause, the kind that carries more weight than words. "Oh, that," she said, her tone shifting to something breezy, dismissive. "It was very last minute, Sienna. Lila mentioned you told her you had plans, and we know you're always so busy with work." My stomach twisted. I hadn't told Lila anything of the sort. I hadn't spoken to her about the holidays at all. "I didn't say that, Mom," I replied, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. She sighed, that dramatic sigh she perfected over years. "Sienna, please don't start. It was just a casual gathering, nothing formal. Lila's been going through a tough time, and we didn't want to create tension. You understand, don't you? You've always been our strong one." That phrase, our strong one, cut deeper than the exclusion itself. It was code for the one they could dismiss, the one whose feelings didn't matter because I was supposed to handle everything, always. Before I could respond, she added, "We'll see you on Christmas Day for the real celebration." The invitation felt like a consolation prize, a bone tossed to keep me quiet. I hung up, my mind racing, replaying years of moments like this. Family vacations I learned about through photos, dinners rescheduled around Lila's crises, my own milestones overshadowed by her chaos. I felt erased, like my only value to them was what I could pay for, not who I was. That night, Lila texted me, her words dripping with casual indifference. "Sorry you missed the party. It was so fun. Mom said you were busy anyway. By the way, can you help me pick out Mom's gift? I'm thinking jewelry, but need your input." No apology, no acknowledgement of the lie she told, just another request for money disguised as sisterly bonding. I stared at her message, the screen glowing in my dark apartment. The hurt was raw, but so was the clarity. My family didn't see me as one of them. I was their utility, their fallback, not their daughter or sister. I didn't reply. Instead, I lay awake, the weight of that realization pressing against my chest, wondering how I'd let it come to this. I still wanted to believe we could be a family, the kind that gathers without scorecards, that loves without conditions. So, in October, I tried to bridge the gap. I planned a weekend in Manhattan, my treat, hoping it would bring us closer. I reserved a suite at a boutique hotel, sleek and modern, with views of the skyline. I secured tickets to a Broadway show Lila had raved about on Instagram, and I booked a table at an upscale restaurant, the kind with linen napkins and candlelight. I thought, maybe if I gave them this perfect weekend, they'd see me, really see me. The weekend arrived, and at first, it felt promising. We checked into the hotel, the concierge greeting us with practiced warmth. But as we settled in, the cracks appeared. Margot walked through my apartment on the way to the hotel, her eyes scanning the space with a faint grimace. "It's cozy," she said, her tone implying it was anything but. "You could do so much better with your salary, Sienna." I brushed it off, used to her critiques, but it stung all the same. At dinner, Lila dominated the conversation, her voice loud and animated as she recounted her latest boyfriend drama, a saga of late-night fights and tearful reconciliations. Everett nodded along, chuckling at her theatrics, while Margot added her own commentary, praising Lila's passion. I tried to share a story about a recent project at work, a big win for my team, but the table went quiet. Lila cut in with another anecdote, and the moment passed. By the end of the weekend, I realized I'd spent thousands of dollars for a few hours of their company, and all I got in return was criticism and indifference. I went home exhausted, not from the expense, but from the emotional labor of trying to belong. After that weekend, things got worse. Lila's texts started coming during work hours, urgent and relentless. "Sienna, I need $500 for my car payment. It's due tomorrow." Or, "Can you spot me for this dress? I have an interview, it's important." I'd respond when I could, but if I didn't reply instantly, her messages turned sharp. "Wow, too busy for your sister now." Typical. I'd be in the middle of a client meeting, my phone buzzing with her passive-aggressive demands, each one chipping away at my focus. My parents didn't help. They'd call with their own comparisons, always framing Lila's recklessness as living life to the fullest, while my stability was somehow a flaw. "Lila's just more spontaneous," Margot would say. "You're so serious, Sienna. Loosen up a little." Then came the moment that pushed me closer to the edge. One afternoon, a colleague, Mark, pulled me aside in the office break room. He looked uncomfortable, his usual easy smile replaced by a furrowed brow. "Sienna, I got a call from your dad," he said, his voice low. "He said you've been distant with the family, that you're not supporting them like you should. He asked me to talk to you about family loyalty." I felt the blood drain from my face. Everett had reached into my professional life, trying to shame me into compliance through someone I worked with. Mark shifted awkwardly. I told him it's not my place, but are you okay? I nodded, mumbled something about family drama, and excused myself to the bathroom, where I stood gripping the sink, staring at my reflection. The humiliation was suffocating. They weren't just manipulating me, they were dragging my career into it, painting me as the problem to anyone who'd listen. I started dreading the holiday season, a mix of longing and fear. I'd already bought gifts, thoughtful ones, chosen with care, hoping they'd spark some connection. But the Instagram post, Lila's texts, and now Everett's call to my colleague made it clear. My role in the family wasn't daughter or sister. It was financier, fixer, the one who paid for their mistakes while they celebrated without me. I wanted to believe Christmas Day would be different, that the real celebration Margot promised would include me would feel like family. But deep down, I knew better. The exclusion wasn't a mistake, it was a message. And what came next, that $52,000 invoice, would prove just how far they were willing to go to keep me in that role, tethered to their needs, invisible unless I was writing a check. January hit New York like a cold slap, gray skies, slushy sidewalks, and that post-holiday quiet that makes you feel like the world's holding its breath. I was trying to move on from the Christmas exclusion, throwing myself into work, finding comfort in the predictable rhythm of spreadsheets and deadlines. But then, one Thursday evening, I collected my mail from the lobby of my apartment building. Among the usual bills and flyers was a thick manila envelope, my mother's elegant handwriting scrawled across it. Sienna Caldwell. No note, no explanation, just my name and address. Curious, I opened it in the elevator, expecting maybe a late holiday card or some family paperwork. What I found stopped my heart. It was an invoice from Luxury Motors of Westchester for $52,000, a brand new Mercedes GLE coupe, purchased by Lila Caldwell, co-signed by me. My signature stared back at me, bold and clear, but I'd never signed it. Below the invoice was a stack of loan documents detailing monthly payments of $1,138 for 60 months. My hands shook as I flipped through the papers, insurance forms, warranty details, and then a handwritten note from Lila in her loopy script. "Thanks, sis. The old car was totaled, and I needed something reliable. Mom said you'd get it since you're doing so well. First payment's due February 1st. Love you. Zoxo." The casual entitlement in her words made my stomach churn. I stumbled into my apartment, collapsing onto the couch, the papers spilling across my lap. $52,000. Forged. By my own family. The betrayal wasn't just the money, it was the assumption that I'd roll over, pay up, and keep quiet like I always had. I sat there, staring at the ceiling, replaying years of their demands. Lila's credit card debt, my parents' property taxes, the endless favors that were never repaid. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated move, and I was their target. Then, as if the invoice wasn't enough, I checked my email, and there it was, a notification from a crowdfunding site I'd never used. Someone had set up a fundraiser in my name, titled, "Helping Lila Recover from Hardship." The description claimed I was generously supporting my sister after her devastating car accident, complete with a photo of Lila smiling beside the Mercedes. The organizer, Margot Caldwell, my own mother, had created a public lie to shame me into compliance, painting me as the hero she knew I'd never agree to be. Comments from distant relatives and family friends poured in. "So proud of Sienna for stepping up. What a great sister." Each word felt like a knife, twisting the narrative to make me the villain if I refused. I couldn't sleep that night. The invoice, the forged signature, the fake fundraiser, it was all too much. But it wasn't over. The next morning, I logged into my bank accounts, a habit I'd picked up after years of bailing out my family. What I found sent a chill down my spine. Someone had tried to access my main savings account, the one with my emergency fund, my dream of a future home, just the day before. The attempt had triggered a security alert, and the bank had frozen the account pending my verification. I called them immediately, my voice trembling as I answered their questions. The representative was calm, professional. "The access attempt came from a device we've seen before," she said. "An older laptop registered to your account." My old laptop, the one I'd given my parents last year when I upgraded. The violation was staggering, not just forging my name, but trying to siphon my savings, the money I'd worked so hard for. I felt exposed, betrayed in a way I hadn't thought possible. This wasn't just about a car. This was theft, deliberate and cold, from the people who were supposed to love me. I called my father, my hands still shaking, the invoice clutched in my lap. He answered on the second ring, his voice smooth, patronizing, like he was calming a child. "Sienna, did you get the paperwork we sent?" he asked, as if we were discussing a grocery list. "Dad, what is this?" I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I never agreed to co-sign for Lila's car. That's not my signature. There was a pause, then his tone hardened. "Now, Sienna, don't be dramatic. Your mother signed for you. We knew you'd want to help your sister. She's been through a trauma with the accident." I cut him off, my anger rising. The accident she caused? Driving drunk. I'd heard from my Aunt Penelope that Lila had totaled her old car in a ditch after a night out. Everett dismissed it. That's beside the point. She needs a car for her new job. I almost laughed at the absurdity. "What new job?" I asked. Lila hadn't held steady work in years. He hesitated, then admitted. "She has an interview next week. She needs to make a good impression. The Mercedes will help." The logic was infuriating, buying a $52,000 car for an interview she might not even get. "Dad, someone forged my signature." "That's fraud," I said, my voice steady now. "I'm not paying for this." His tone turned icy. "Don't be selfish, Sienna. You make more than enough to cover the payments. Family helps family." I hung up, my heart pounding, his words echoing in my head. Family helps family. But this wasn't help. It was theft, wrapped in the guise of love. By the end of the day, My shock had turned to fury. Lila texted. Her message is a mix of guilt and entitlement. Dad said you're being difficult about the car. You don't even drive a Mercedes, so why do you care? If you don't help, I'll be stranded. Each word was a reminder of how little they valued me. My mother emailed, her words dripping with manipulation. Sienna, your father is disappointed in your reaction. Lila is heartbroken. I raised you better than this. The car's already purchased, and Lila loves it. Don't ruin this for her. She's planning to thank you on Instagram this weekend. Don't embarrass her by causing drama. The mention of Instagram was telling. This wasn't about family. It was about appearances, about keeping their perfect image intact, even if it meant breaking me. I knew I couldn't let this slide. The next morning, I called in sick to work, a first in 3 years, and made an appointment with a lawyer, Nora Hoffman, recommended by my friend Elise. I met her in a midtown brownstone, her office warm with wood paneling, a stark contrast to the cold dread in my chest. I handed her the invoice, the loan documents, Lila's note. She reviewed them, her expression growing grim. This is textbook fraud, she said, removing her glasses. Your mother forged your signature on a legally binding document. That's a felony, family or not. I swallowed hard, the word felony sinking in. What are my options? I asked, clutching my coffee for warmth. You can report it to the police, which could lead to criminal charges, she said. Or report it to the bank and dealership as fraud, letting them pursue action. Or you pay for a car you didn't agree to. The choice seemed obvious, but years of guilt made me hesitate. Nora looked at me, her voice gentle but firm. Sienna, ask yourself, what kind of relationship do you have with people who do this to you? I left her office with a plan, but my mind was a storm. That afternoon, I called the bank, my voice steady despite the panic. My name is Sienna Caldwell. I told the fraud department. I need to report a forged signature on an auto loan. The representative, Robert, was kind but methodical, guiding me through verification questions. I sent him the documents, explained the situation, and held my breath. We'll investigate, he said. If the fraud is confirmed, the loan will be removed from your name, and the vehicle may be repossessed. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Please proceed, I said, my voice firm. Then I froze all my accounts, changed every password, every security question, anything my family might know. I wasn't just protecting my money, I was reclaiming my life. The clarity was overwhelming. This wasn't love, this wasn't family, this was exploitation, and it had gone on long enough. I'd spent years paying for their approval, but that invoice, that forged signature, that fake fundraiser, they were the breaking point. I was done being their ATM, their scapegoat, their invisible daughter. For the first time, I saw them for what they were, and I knew what I had to do. The air felt heavy as I drove to my parents' house in Westchester, the familiar colonial looming ahead, its perfectly manicured lawn glowing under the streetlights. I'd agreed to their dinner invitation, but not out of hope for reconciliation, not this time. The $52,000 invoice, my forged signature, the fake fundraiser, and the attempted breach of my savings account had shattered any illusions I had left about my family. I wasn't there to mend things. I was there to set boundaries, to say what I'd held back for years, face to face. My mother, Margot, had called it a chance to discuss this like adults, but her tone was a command, not an invitation. We expect you at 7 o'clock, she'd said, as if my compliance was a given. In the past, I'd have rushed to please them, desperate for their approval. Now, I was done playing their game. I arrived right on time, my resolve like armor. Through the front window, I saw Lila's new Mercedes parked prominently in the driveway, a gleaming trophy of their betrayal, while my parents' cars were tucked away in the garage. It was a statement, a reminder of what they expected me to fund. Margot answered the door with an air kiss that didn't touch my cheek, her smile tight. Finally ready to be reasonable, she asked, leading me to the dining room where Everett and Lila waited. The table was set with her usual elegance, crystal glasses, polished silver, but it felt like a stage, not a home. Lila sat scrolling through her phone, barely glancing up as I entered. Everett stood by the fireplace, a tumbler of scotch in hand, his expression a calculated blend of disappointment and authority. "Sit down, Sienna," he said, gesturing to the chair across from Lila. "Your mother's made your favorite meal. Let's discuss this calmly." I almost laughed. The meal was beef stroganoff, Lila's favorite, not mine. I'd disliked it since childhood, a detail they'd never cared to remember. Before I could speak, Everett launched into his script. "We're deeply disappointed in how you've handled this situation," he said, his voice measured but sharp. "Involving a lawyer, threatening fraud charges. This isn't how our family operates." I took a breath, steadying myself. "How does our family operate, Dad?" I asked, my voice low, deliberate. "By forging my signature? By trying to drain my savings? By excluding me from Christmas and expecting me to pay for Lila's lifestyle?" Lila slammed her fork down, her eyes flashing. "Oh my God, are you still whining about Christmas? It was a small gathering, Sienna. You make everyone uncomfortable with your perfect job, your perfect apartment, your constant judgment of my choices." Her words were sharp, meant to wound, but they only fueled my clarity. "It was our entire extended family, Lila," I said, meeting her gaze. "Everyone but me. And now you've forged my name on a $52,000 loan." Margot placed a hand on Lila's arm, her voice soothing but patronizing. "Sienna, your sister is sensitive. You've always been jealous of her, and frankly, it's unbecoming for a woman your age." The familiar script was unfolding. Lila the victim, me the villain, but I wasn't following it anymore. "I'm not paying for the car," I said, my voice steady, cutting through their theatrics. "What you did was illegal. I've frozen my accounts, documented the fraud attempts, and I'm done with this." Everett's face darkened, his scotch glass tightening in his grip. "After everything we've done for you," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "We raised you, gave you a home, opportunities." I cut him off, surprising even myself. "You did the bare minimum required of parents, Dad. I earned my scholarships, paid my loans, built my career. You've supported Lila through failed degrees, bailed her out of debt, and now committed fraud to buy her a car she can't afford. That's not family, that's exploitation." Lila stood, her chair tipping over with a crash. "You think you're better than us," she spat. "Nobody even likes you, Sienna. Even your ex left because you're so cold." I didn't flinch. I knew the truth about my ex. He cheated with Lila, a secret I'd kept to avoid more drama. Their cruelty was no longer a surprise, just a confirmation. Everett stepped forward, his voice a low growl. "If you don't pay for this car, you're no longer part of this family. No more holidays, no inheritance, no connection to the Caldwell name." The threat, once paralyzing, now felt like a strange relief. "You're asking me to choose between $52,000 for a car I didn't buy and a family that steals from me, lies to me, and treats me like I'm disposable," I said, standing, my napkin folded neatly beside my untouched plate. "That's not a hard choice." I walked to the door, Margot's voice trailing after me. "Lila needs that car, Sienna. What's she supposed to do?" I turned, meeting her eyes one last time. "The same thing I did, buy something she can actually afford." I stepped into the cold night, the door clicking shut behind me. The drive home was a blur, adrenaline coursing through me. I'd said what I'd buried for years, and the weight of it lifted, even as grief lingered for the family I'd never truly had. The fallout came fast, like a storm I'd known was brewing. 3 days after I reported the fraud, the bank called. Robert, from the fraud department, had a voice that was calm but firm. "Miss Caldwell, we've confirmed the signature on the loan was forged. The loan's been removed from your name and credit report. We're proceeding with repossession of the vehicle." I exhaled, a mix of relief and dread. "How soon?" I asked. "Could be today, tomorrow," he said. "The agent's been assigned." I thanked him and hung up, bracing for what I knew was coming. It didn't take long. Within hours, my phone lit up with notifications. Lila was calling, leaving voicemails that grew more hysterical with each one. "They took my car, Sienna." I'm stranded at the mall. How could you do this to me? You ruined my life. Her texts were a barrage of rage and guilt. You stole my car out of jealousy. I told everyone how selfish you are. I didn't respond. I blocked her number, a small act of self-preservation I wished I'd done sooner. Then came the social media onslaught. Lila posted a tearful video on Instagram, her mascara-streaked face framed against the backdrop of our parents' driveway, now empty of her Mercedes. My sister betrayed me, she sobbed. She had my car taken because she's jealous of my happiness. The comments poured in, relatives, family friends, even people I barely knew, condemning me as heartless, ungrateful. How could you do this to Lila? One cousin wrote. Family sticks together, another added. The narrative was carefully crafted, and I was the villain. But the worst came when my father took it further. He called my boss, Sandra, at the firm where I'd worked for years to build my reputation. I'm worried about Sienna, he told her, his voice dripping with false concern. She's been unstable lately, making poor decisions about family financial obligations. I'm not sure she's fit to handle client funds. It was a calculated move, designed to undermine my career, to punish me for standing up to them. I found out when Sandra called me into her office, her expression a mix of concern and skepticism. Sienna, your father called me today, she said, leaning forward. He said you're struggling emotionally, that you're turning against your family. I've worked with you for years. I know better than to buy that. What's going on? I hesitated, then told her the truth. The forged loan, the attempted theft, the exclusion. Her face softened, but her voice was firm. Don't let them bully you, Sienna. I learned that lesson the hard way with my own family years ago. You focus on your work, and I've got your back. Her support was a lifeline, a reminder that respect didn't have to come from blood. I walked out of her office feeling lighter, but the weight of my family's betrayal lingered. They weren't just fighting to keep the car, they were fighting to keep control, to pull me back into their cycle of manipulation. But I was done. I'd chosen myself, and no amount of their rage or lies could change that. The storm of confrontation was over, but the aftermath left me standing in a strange, quiet space, part grief, part relief. I'd reported the fraud, faced my family, and walked away from their threats. Now, I had to decide what came next. My lawyer, Nora Hoffman, called me 2 weeks after that tense family dinner, her voice steady and professional. Your parents are ready to settle, she said. They're scared, Sienna. The bank's evidence of a forged signature is airtight, and they know it's a felony. The terms were clear. They'd pay all my legal fees, sign notarized admissions of a fraud, and agree to legally binding non-contact orders. In exchange, I'd refrain from pressing criminal charges against Margot. I sat with the decision for a day, weighing justice against closure. Sending my mother to jail would make her a martyr in Lila's narrative, dragging the drama on for years. I didn't want that. I wanted a clean break, a chance to move forward without their shadow over my life. So, I agreed to the settlement, signing the papers with a hand that no longer trembled. It wasn't forgiveness, it was freedom. My parents complied quickly, their signatures on the non-contact orders a final acknowledgement that I was no longer theirs to manipulate. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of their expectations lift, like a chain I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. With the legal battle behind me, I turned to rebuilding what mattered most, my sense of belonging. Christmas that year was a revelation. I'd accepted an invitation from my friend Elise and her family, who'd always treated me with a warmth my own family never could. Their home in upstate New York was modest, cozy, filled with the kind of laughter that didn't come with a price tag. We spent the day decorating their tree, stringing lights that flickered against the snow outside. Elise's parents asked about my work, my dreams, and actually listened when I answered. Her dad, a quiet man with a quick wit, taught me their family's cookie recipe, his hands dusted with flour as he shared stories of his own childhood. There was no scorekeeping, no subtle jabs about my career or my apartment. When we sat down to dinner, Elise's mom raised a glass and said, "To family, born and chosen." I felt tears prick my eyes, not from sadness, but from the realization that I was wanted, valued just as I was. That night, I drove back to my apartment with leftover pie, a heart full of gratitude, and an invitation to their New Year's gathering. For the first time, I understood what family could feel like when it wasn't a transaction. Healing, though, wasn't just about finding new connections. It was about unlearning the lies my family had woven into my mind. I started therapy with Dr. Laura Chun, a specialist in family trauma, whose calm presence felt like a safe harbor. In our first session, she asked me a question that stopped me cold. "Sienna, if a friend told you this story, what would you tell them to do?" The answer came instantly. "I'd tell them to run and never look back." She nodded, her eyes kind but piercing. "So why is it different when it's you?" I didn't have an answer, not then. But week after week, Dr. Chin helped me unravel the guilt I'd carried for years, the belief that I owed my family my success, my money, my peace. She taught me that love shouldn't come with invoices, that boundaries aren't selfish, they're survival. Slowly, I began to let go of the need for their approval, replacing it with a quiet pride in the life I'd built on my own terms. One unexpected anchor in this journey was Margaret, a senior colleague at work who'd become a mentor over the years. One evening, over coffee in a quiet Midtown cafe, I shared the whole story, the invoice, the fraud, the fallout. She listened, her silver hair catching the light, her face etched with understanding. "I cut my sister out of my life 30 years ago, she said, her voice steady but heavy. "She used me the way your family used you. Guilt, money, control. Walking away was the hardest thing I ever did, but it saved me. You're stronger than you know, Sienna, for choosing yourself." Her words hit me like a lifeline, a reminder that I wasn't alone, that others had walked this path and survived. Margaret's story gave me permission to keep moving forward, to believe that letting go of toxic ties wasn't failure, it was courage. By spring, I was starting to thrive in ways I hadn't thought possible. The distraction of my family's drama was gone, and my focus at work sharpened. My boss, Sandra, noticed, calling me into her office one day with a smile. "Your work on the Wellington project was outstanding," she said. "We're promoting you to senior analyst with a bonus to match." I felt a surge of pride, not just for the promotion, but for the fact that I could invest that bonus in myself, my future, my dreams, without fear of it being siphoned off. Outside of work, I rediscovered passions I'd let fade. I joined a book club, where lively debates over novels became a weekly joy. I started hiking with a group from work, the trails outside the city offering a peace I hadn't known I needed. My apartment, once criticized by Margot as depressingly small, became a sanctuary, decorated with colors and art that reflected me, not their expectations. I even began dating again, cautiously, with a new awareness of what I deserved in relationships, respect, not obligation. Then came an invitation that surprised me. My Aunt Penelope, my father's sister and the family's quiet rebel, reached out. She and her husband were hosting a small gathering at their lake house to celebrate their 40th anniversary. "No drama, no manipulation," she wrote. "Just good food and better company. And absolutely no other Caldwells invited." I hesitated, still wary of family after everything, but I went. The weekend was a revelation. Penelope's lake house was warm, unpretentious, filled with laughter and stories that didn't revolve around status or money. One evening, as we sat on the dock watching the sunset, she took my hand. "Your mother was always like this," she said, her voice soft but unflinching. Even as a teenager, she measured people by what they could give her. "Your father was her perfect match, transactional, obsessed with appearances. When you were born, I hoped you'd escape their influence." I looked at her, my throat tight. "I did," I said. "It just took 31 years. She squeezed my hand, her smile proud. "You did what I never could, Sienna. You stood up to them." Her words settled into me, a quiet affirmation that I'd made the right choice, even if it hurt. As summer arrived, I found a new rhythm. The scars of my family's betrayal were still there, faint but present. There were nights I woke up questioning if I'd been too harsh, if I'd lost something irreplaceable. But those moments were fleeting. Therapy, friends, and my own resilience reminded me that I hadn't lost a family, I'd escaped a trap. My life was fuller now, not because of what I'd left behind, but because of what I'd chosen to build. I was learning to love myself, not for what I could give, but for who I was. And in that space, I found something I hadn't dared hope for: peace. Looking back, that $52,000 invoice wasn't just a betrayal, it was a gift. It forced me to see my family for what they were, people who measured love in dollars and loyalty in compliance. I didn't lose them, I lost their lies. I walked away, not out of weakness, but from a strength I didn't know I had. Real family doesn't forge your name or drain your savings. Real family lifts you up, celebrates you, and loves you without conditions. I found that with Elisa's family, with friends who became my chosen home, with a life I built on my own terms. Healing hasn't been easy. There are still nights when the scars ache, when I wonder what might have been. But I've learned that family isn't blood. It's mutual respect, genuine support, shared laughter over a crowded table. This Christmas, I'm volunteering at a local shelter, pouring love into a community that needs it. I'm joining Elisa's family in their Vermont cabin, where the warmth is real, not staged. If my story resonates, know this: you deserve relationships that add to your life, not subtract from it. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. Choosing yourself is the bravest act of all. Have you ever had to walk away to find peace? Share your story below. Like, subscribe, and let's keep talking about what family really means.